Welcome, everyone. We're really happy to have you here. I'm Christina Dunn. I'm the president of our Wild Ones Dallas-Fort Worth chapter, and today we're going to be discussing landscaping for resilience with the Native Plant Society of Texas and Christy Ten Eyck. But before we get started, or before I turn it over to our speakers, just a few notes. This webinar is hosted on YouTube Live, so feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. If you'd like to hide the chat, you can enter full screen mode, and closed caption is available in your settings, and you can pause or rewind using controls at the bottom of the player. But don't forget to like and subscribe this video, or like and subscribe to our channel for more great content. All right, so for those of you who are new to Wild Ones, we are a membership organization devoted to promoting native landscapes through education, advocacy, and collaborative action. We carry out our mission through national education programs, native garden designs, seeds for education grants, and free webinars, much like this one. If you're not a Wild Ones member, we hope you join us in helping native plants and natural landscapes thrive in every community. You are able to get involved with us at the local level. Wild Ones chapters offer knowledgeable, hands-on, and a supportive community. Chapter programs include garden tours, speakers, conferences, as well as plant sales, exchanges, and seed collections. Local chapters are a great place to network with other nature enthusiasts and learn more about native plants in your area. We are an inclusive community, so we appreciate diverse voices and backgrounds, and we consider that to make us stronger. That's why we welcome everyone to join us. So if you'd like, you can connect with your local Wild Ones chapter and begin making an environmental impact, contribute to education, and build a network focused on the preservation, restoration, and establishment of native plant communities in your area. Like I mentioned earlier, my name's Christina. I'm the president of the Dallas-Fort Worth chapter. We are currently a seedling chapter, and we're looking to grow. So if you are in Dallas-Fort Worth or even in the Texas area, feel free to check out this this icon and go to our website. We have lots of events coming up, and we're also working on planning a lot of events for 2025. We would love to have you there. So if you're in the area, feel free to check us out. If you are not in Dallas or you are not around in an area where there is a chapter near you, think about starting a Wild One seedling chapter near you. So chapters form in a variety of ways, but what they have in common is people like you who are passionate about the environment. Wild Ones provide support, guidance, and information, and our chapter liaisons they're in the chat with us today. So if you have any questions, you can message them, or you can fill out your information on our website, but we'd love to help you get started. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome our speaker, Haley Giambalvo. She is the Vice President of Communications for our Native Plant Society of Texas and is a Texas Master Naturalist. She leads efforts to connect the public with the Society's mission through their magazine, website, YouTube, and their social media. As the founder of NativeBackyards.com, Haley inspires homeowners to create wildlife-friendly spaces with native plants, turning your own yard into a thriving pollinator habitat. So, welcome, Haley.
All right. Hello, everyone. I am excited to be here today representing the Native Plant Society of Texas and to talk about our amazing, resilient Texas native plants. I just want to spend a few minutes introducing you to our society if you are not familiar with us, and letting you know about some of the resources and the programs that we offer, and a little bit about why we think native plants are the best possible thing for you to be using in your landscape. And then I'll be turning it over to Christy to share her beautiful drought-tolerant design with us. So just a little bit about the Native Plant Society. Very similar to the Wild Ones, our mission is to promote conservation, research, and utilization of native plants throughout Texas. And we do that through education, outreach, and example. We are a growing organization. We currently have over 5,300 members spread across 35 different chapters in the state. And for those of you that might be joining from your Wild Ones chapter in the Dallas area, We also have 5 Native Plant Society chapters in the greater DFW metro area. So please check us out and join us. We would love to have you. In terms of who we serve, we really want to support everyone from that newbie gardener, the person that's just starting to experiment with native plants in their yards, to more native plant enthusiasts that maybe have gardened with them for years, as well as our landscape and nursery professionals that want to deepen their knowledge of our Texas native plants and how they can better use them to support their clients and customers. And then lastly, schools and other nonprofit organizations that are looking to start native plant gardens on their properties to beautify them and bring them to life with pollinators and birds and other wildlife. And we do that through a variety of ways. Below are 3 of our most popular resources that I'm going to talk about individually, just briefly. We have our native plant database, our native landscaping certification program, and our NICE nursery partner program. And each of these programs, we really want to design to address the fact that we are a very large state with several diverse ecosystems and a lot of different native plants. We have something like 5,000 species that are native here in Texas. And not every native plant is going to perform well across the state. So we really want to help support our members in finding the plants that will really thrive in their particular ecoregion. And one of the best ways that we can do that is through our new native plant database. This is a new resource. It's just a little over a year old. You can find it on our website. Anyone can access it. It has over 400 Texas native plants that are commercially available. So you're likely to find them at a nursery that carries native plants. And with the database, you're able to filter the results by your local ecoregion and your particular site needs. So your sunlight conditions, your soil type, and even the wildlife benefits you're particularly looking to attract to have in your yard. And then each plant profile has a really handy map that shows you where that particular species is native in Texas, along with photos and some helpful planting and maintenance tips. So please do check that out. We get a lot of good feedback about our database. We also have a program called our Native Landscaping Certification Program. We offer 4 levels of classes, as well as a companion class on native landscapes for birds. And these are provided by our chapters in the spring and the fall across the state. They are day-long classes, and each of them covers 50 plants specific to that particular ecoregion in detail. So students learn about those plants in a classroom setting, and then they also take a plant walk to see the plants in nature, get a touch and feel them as part of the class. So it's a really in-depth overview of some of the great plants we have here in Texas. And each class comes with an optional test that participants can take if they want to become certified. And a lot of our participants want to offer landscaping services and related things, so they use that certification as part of their marketing materials. And then our NICE Nursery Partner Program. This is our program to really support the growing list of nurseries that are carrying Texas native plants. And our chapters partner with their local nurseries to help them promote their native plants that they have in their inventory through holding outreach events at their nurseries, helping them with educational signage, all sorts of things like that. And we have a directory on our website where you can see where those different nurseries are located here in Texas. Of course, we have a lot of other things we offer. This is just a few other programs. So if you know of a school that would like to start a native plant garden, we have a lot of great resources on our site for schools. We have a quick start guide they can use to help walk them through the steps of starting their own garden. We link to a lot of different activities that teachers can use with their students related to native plants and the pollinators and things that they attract. We have a popular program for undergraduate and graduate students that awards them grants and scholarships if they're interested in studying native plants. And then we have our Bring Back the Monarchs grant program, which last year awarded close to $30,000 in grants to projects in our communities that are dedicated to developing monarch habitat and demonstration gardens. So The grants for that program open up later this month. So if you're in Texas and are interested in applying, be sure to check those out. Now, in terms of why we think native plants are so great, there's a lot of reasons, and I'm sure you're familiar with some of them, but just want to hit on some of our favorite benefits of native plants, starting with their ability to conserve water. That's the topic of today's workshop, and an important one here in Texas as we continue to grow in population and go through periods of drought. More and more, we need to find drought-tolerant solutions for our landscape. And a really great thing about a lot of our native plants is they have these deep root systems that allows them to access water deep underground. And this graphic here is a great depiction. It's some common prairie plants, and you can see some of these have roots that go even 14 feet underground, which is pretty remarkable. And when you compare that to a traditional turf grass lawn, which if you look far on the left side of the screen, that first plant there is turf grass with its shallow roots. You can see that some of these other plants really can do a better job of not only accessing water and not needing to be watered as regularly, but they can also help prevent erosion and limit the runoff of pesticides and herbicides during a rainfall event, and help take those things into the ground instead of having them run off into our waterways. In addition, native plants, if you can incorporate more of those into your yard, you'll be increasing the biodiversity in your neighborhood. I know when I walk around my neighborhood, I tend to see the same handful of plants on repeat, the same type of turf grass, a few different shrubs, some of them mostly non-native species. And so if we can just incorporate new plants, native plants in our landscapes, we can help increase the biodiversity in our local ecosystem. And there was an interesting study conducted by Doug Tallamy that looked at two similarly landscaped yards. So they had the same amount roughly of plant material, same amount of trees and shrubs, but one was primarily landscaped with plants that were native to that area, and the other was landscaped with non-native plants. And what they found was that the yard with native plants was supporting 29 times more insect and wildlife diversity than the yard with non-natives. And that's a huge difference. So even if on the surface level they look fairly the same, a yard with native plants is supporting a lot more life. And why that is because our local insects really rely on native plants for their food sources. And that is particularly the case for plant-eating insects. 90% of them can only eat the plants that they've co-evolved with. They either don't recognize non-native plants as food, or they're physically not able to eat them, most of them anyways. So having those native plants in your yard provides insects with a critical food source. And that is particularly the case for the caterpillars of our butterflies and moth species, many of which rely on a single host plant or a subset of host plants to lay their eggs on. And we talk a lot about the monarch and its host plant milkweed. That's maybe the most famous host plant relationship, but that type of relationship occurs for a wide variety of species of butterflies and moths. So the more of those host plants we can bring into our yards, the more of those species we can support. And it doesn't just stop with our insects. By adding more natives and attracting those insects to our yard, we're going to be attracting more birds, because birds need a huge amount of insects in their diet. And this is another pretty remarkable finding from Doug Tallamy. He found that the Carolina chickadees, these little birds that are pretty common backyard visitors here in Texas, they need somewhere between 6,000 to 9,000 caterpillars just to feed one clutch of their young. That's a huge amount of insect material that they need to be able to find in a fairly short amount of time, fairly close to the nest. So by having those plants in your yard that are supporting the insects, you're going to be supporting the birds and other wildlife as well. And don't use pesticides, because that would defeat the purpose. So a pesticide-free yard full of native plants. And here in Texas, it's particularly important for us to be doing that because of where we're located. We are right in the middle of a couple migratory pathways. So we are on the central flyway for a lot of migratory birds. We've got birds flying through our state right now as they head south for the winter, and they need those food sources to fuel their journey. Similarly, monarchs pass through Texas in the spring and fall on their way to and from Mexico and are looking for our native milkweed and other nectar sources to help them along the way. So really kind of a unique part about Texas and how much of an impact we can have by being more thoughtful about the plants that we put into our landscapes. Because what we're really trying to do when we think about gardening with native plants is really just balance out this scale. So if you're like me in the past, before I got into native plants, I primarily chose the plants from my garden based on their decorative value, whether I thought they looked good and satisfied my own personal needs for how I wanted my yard to look. But now I really think about the other side of the scale is what benefit are they offering for my local insects and wildlife, and how are they doing in terms of helping to conserve water. And so I think, and the Native Plant Society believes that you don't need to sacrifice decorative value to also help support some of these ecological needs and balance out the scale. And I think when we look at Christy's design, her beautiful design that she's come up with here shortly, you'll see just that we can have both. And our final kind of pitch to you all is that we really truly believe that native plants have what homeowners want. As I've said, they're drought tolerant. They really don't need a lot of supplemental watering once they're established. They can handle the local rainfall conditions. If you're picking those plants that are native to your local ecoregion, they're designed for your climate. They really are hands-off. Instead of having to do a lot of mowing and maintenance, these plants need very little. They're an opportunity to bring colorful blooms into your yard at different points in the year. And of course, they're going to naturally be attracting those butterflies and birds to bring your yard to life. And then lastly, something that's really a great selling point of native plants for those of us that are new to gardening or maybe don't have a great green thumb, because they are so hardy and resilient, they really do have a pretty good success rate. They're not that easy to kill. So we definitely encourage you to try some more native plants in your garden. And that is it from me. I'm going to now have the honor of introducing Christy Ten Eyck. She is the founder of Ten Eyck Landscape Architects in Austin, Texas. She is known for innovative, sustainable designs. Christy integrates native plants, water harvesting, and local materials to create meaningful landscapes. Her projects, including the award-winning University of Texas at El Paso campus transformation, emphasize resilience and connection to place. As an American Society of Landscape Architects Fellow, she is a recognized leader in sustainable landscape design. So, Christine, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Haley. It's an honor to be here with you today and look forward to going through a little bit about our office and what we do, and then on to the important part of the design for a kind of a typical home in the North Dallas-Fort Worth area. Obviously, I don't do this alone. I have many colleagues in my office, talented colleagues that we're all aligned on our goals of what we're trying to achieve. Our mission really is to connect the urban dweller with nature and one another. And so with every project, whether it's a streetscape or a college campus or someone's front or backyard, that's what we're trying to do, is really connect people with nature. It's healing. And it brings such a depth to our everyday life to have that connection and to create spaces that connect us with each other. Our firm works all over the Southwest and even into Mexico. These red dots kind of show all the different places that we work. Of course, Texas is like a country unto itself and has so many beautiful ecoregions. We never get bored because there's so much to learn from every ecoregion. But we also work in Arizona, and New Mexico, and Utah, as well as Mexico. when I was 25, I went on a raft trip down the Colorado River through the Grand Canyon, and it made me get the urge to move to Arizona. So I spent 22 years there, and that's where I started my firm. And really, it was an eye-opening experience after moving there from Dallas, in that we only got 7 inches of rain a year, and sometimes not even that. In fact, there was one year where we only got 2 inches. So I really learned to appreciate every drop of water from that experience. Since I've moved back to Texas 18 years ago, we've been working in the hill country and the Chihuahuan Desert as well. And each of these areas, as you know, have climate changes and things going on. In 2007, when shortly after we first moved here, we got nothing but rain. And this is a photo of a house underwater that was on the banks of Lake Travis, which is our main lake for drinking water. And then by 2011, we were in epic drought. That's a shot of Lake Travis. It was 50 feet low. So it was very alarming. I thought I was going to have it so easy moving from Arizona to Texas, and I quickly realized, oh my gosh, this is crazy. We were having fires in Bastrop, and again, another shot of Lake Travis during that 2011 drought. And then, lo and behold, in 2021, horrible snow and ice. And this has really changed the way we think about designing landscapes. I mean, we've always used native plants, but never has it been more evident that we need to use these native plants because they are, for the most part, resilient to all of this crazy weather. So how do we fight heat, drought, flood, and more heat? Well, first of all, shade and structures. Shade structures, trees and shade structures, I would say, are the backbone of a landscape. We think about microclimates, and that is, the different exposures of your residential property. The north side feels totally different than the south side, and the east and the west side are different. You need to take into account north winds in the winter and then the south sun in the winter, and then as it changes over the year. And of course, we use native resilient plants. We are really into water harvesting, and we refer to water harvesting in 2 ways, passive and active. By passive, I mean just directing rainwater through your landscape through the use of swales and rain gardens. Active water harvesting is when you collect it in rain barrels and even connect it to the irrigation system. But we find that we use more passive water harvesting strategies more than anything. And some of those ideas are check dams, where if you have a slope to your property, using either twigs or stones to create these dams that slow the water down off of these slopes. We also use mulch and compost to help soak that water in and not have it evaporate so quickly, especially in the summer. And then there's also psychological cooling. Fountains, of course, judicious fountains, small amounts of water for the most effect. It can simply be a small brimming pool. And then we're always, in both our commercial and public projects as well as residential, always balancing the planting and the hardscape. And by hardscape, I mean patios and walkways and things of that nature. Honestly, we always try to if we have to lean one way or the other, we go heavy on plants. And then, of course, air movement, thinking about the prevailing breezes. Where do you want to sit when that breeze is coming through in the summer? And, and of course, too, adding fans where appropriate. So I'm going to show you just a couple of projects, just to give you a sense of what our firm's work is. And this is a before shot of the University of Texas at El Paso. They wanted us to help them with a campus transformation plan. And this was the situation. This is the heart of campus. It was sloped grass and what we called corny dog trees, things that wouldn't even blow with the wind at all, and a parking lot smack in the center. So one of the things that the school had already planned for was to get cars out of the center of campus and to get rid of parking lots. So they started building parking garages on the periphery so that we could totally redo this area. So this is the before, and this is the after. What we did, we saw these old photographs of the campus when the first 4 buildings were built, and there were arroyos all through campus. And so we redug arroyos through this campus, and then we infused them with Chihuahuan desert plants, bridges for kids to walk across to campus. And we also brought this part of campus up to the Americans with Disabilities Act for universal access. So you can see on the right, that's one of the arroyos that we created, and we use grasses, native grasses, to soak up this water. What was happening, they had one remaining arroyo on campus, and because it was coming off that sloped asphalt, it was ripping that arroyo, and they would get humongous boulders that had to be cleaned out every time there was a major rain. So all of this helps slow this water down, and it also adds to the aesthetics of the campus. Now, these kids, whereas before they had, lawn and those junipers and things, no pollinators to speak of. Now you go to class over this bridge and there are butterflies, and how fun for these kids that were raised in this area to be immersed in their native regional plants. It's what makes them beautiful. It's what makes West Texas beautiful. This is another project, another campus in Austin. It's on the banks of Lake Austin, and this was built by Charles Butt in honor of his mother. He's the HEB owner. And this is a campus where they bring public administrators of our public schools of Texas to learn from thought leaders all over the world on how to make teaching and really try to elevate the state of the art of teaching our kids all throughout Texas. He wanted this to be an inspirational place that would inspire these leaders of our public schools. And as you can see, there's a big bluff. We're always looking at what is draining, what is the watershed coming into this place. And because Lake Austin is right there, all this water is heading for Lake Austin. This school site used to be a cattle ranch filled with Gulf Coast Bermuda everywhere. And we worked with an ecologist, Siglo Group, to help us get rid of many, many invasives. And then we infused it with all of these native plants and a total of 26 rain gardens. Here you see a boardwalk. This is where We had thousands of Chinese tallow trees that are very invasive that have all been eradicated. And then we created outdoor spaces where people could sit, enjoy the views, and just kind of feel immersed. This project is quite young in this photo, but you can see the Gulf muley in bloom and all the different grasses that are so great about soaking up our rainwater. And by the way, this fountain is run off the condensate collected by the air conditioning system. So we really just wanted to create a respite for these teachers and administrators to gather, come together, learn from each other, and go out to their respective schools inspired. I'm also going to show you my house that we bought 18 years ago, and we bought it for the trees. So this was lucky. We already had incredible trees. But the thing that drove me crazy, and you can see the before pictures are always going to be on the left. There was an asphalt circular driveway that went through the whole front yard right over these roots of these beautiful trees. And there were always cars parked in front of the house. So this is a before and an after. You can see we took this driveway out. We removed the wall. At first we loved the wall, but then we thought, no, we really don't love the wall. And we decided to tear it down. We like our privacy, and so we did that with plants instead. As you get up to the house, this is our realtor, I think the first day we saw the house, and this magnificent tree totally surrounded by hardscape. And as you can see, cars were always parked in front of the house. It's a humble little house, 50s, but we really wanted to showcase the tree by creating a court around it and opening up the hardscape to be lighter on its roots. Again, just looking at the front of the house, and we created this path through a garden. I had just moved here from Arizona. I had never had shade. So I needed to have a garden I could experiment with shade-tolerant native plants, and used layers of these native plants and added also some understory trees like Mexican plum and rusty blackcomb viburnum. This is the back. We bought this house from a wonderful artist, Julie Speed, and that's her old studio in the background. But we took out the lawn and created a native garden and pea gravel gathering areas. Again, too, I always felt like that fireplace was screaming at me, and so we changed the design of it so that it was just a little more updated. We did a pea gravel path around this other magnificent tree, and it really helped create a frame. Sometimes people think native plants are messy, and sometimes just creating a frame like this around it give it a more ordered appearance. But anyway, back to the task at hand to tell you about this house that we're hoping you might take some inspiration from on how we thought about it. The brief was to design a typical house in the Dallas-Fort Worth, North Texas area. And so that's kind of where that red dot is, Dallas and Fort Worth. My family is from the Dallas area, and so this was fun to think about. As you can see, this area straddles two different ecoregions, the cross timbers and the Texas Blackland Prairie. So there's a wonderful a wonderful palette of plants to choose from. And you'll see we went a little crazy. So the Blackland Prairie is known for its deep soils and wonderful grasses and forbs and perennials that grow here. So this was definitely an inspiration. That's Leotris that you see there, the purple blooming. And then the Cross Timbers ecoregion with its woodland setting and all the different shrubs that grow in the area, as well as some of the same grasses. And there is crossover from one region to another. So, for instance, side oats grama, the state grass of Texas, grows not only in the Blackland Prairie, but also in the Cross Timbers ecoregion. So we looked for commonalities like that for some of these plants that we're using. So again, thinking about microclimates and this particular house, this house is facing south. So that is really a warm side of the property. And so we started to think, okay, what's the difference between that and then our north garden and then the side gardens? With the south garden, we're going to get plenty of sun, even in the winter. And so we did think, I think that would be a great place for a prairie pollinator garden. Then we also, and I'll be talking more about this in a minute, but we also thought about drainage off this house and where was that going to end up and how could we shape the property so that we could direct it to plants. And you can see we're getting drainage off this side of the house and we're directing it to the back to some detention rain gardens where we're going to plant plants that like a little bit more water. And then, of course, the backyard, we were imagining that this family might have children or a dog that prefers a little bit of lawn. And so we did form it around a crisp lawn of native buffalo grass. And I'll go more into that later. But again, when you're thinking of microclimates, you're thinking of where are we getting shade from? Where are we getting wind? Where's the sun the strongest? Where do we need shade? And what views do we want to see out of our house? So the other thing we think about when we're starting to design someone's house, say if this was a client, they would tell us, oh, we would love to have a fire pit. And so we start out thinking about what are the bones of this landscape, the hardscape. So in other words, if this only had the hardscape and the trees, this is what really is going to hold this project together. And so these particular people wanted a pathway to the front door, a little outdoor front porch for a couple of chairs. They also wanted a back area to sit in outside the back door. They wanted a fire pit. And then we encouraged them to also have a destination way out in the garden so that you could just have a place of respite where you would feel totally surrounded by plants. And so we designed a little patio with a banco or a seat wall with an arbor over the top. And I know this may all sound over the top, but it is achievable in phases, and we'll talk about that later. But even on my house, we had to start in phases. We could not afford to do everything at once. So we started with the backyard. But, you may decide, oh, let's start with the front, get that going, and maybe get all these trees and then add year after year after that as you can afford it. Anyway, this is just another little shot over here of one of the first sketches after we thought about these outdoor hardscape areas and kind of where we wanted the different plants according to the sunlight, etc. So I'm going to go on to the next one and just talk a little more about the hardscape. So the hardscape front walkway entry, we proposed concrete pavers, which you see over to the right. We have a fence that fencing the backyard, and then it turns into a wall that goes all the way around, or a solid fence. We have a little place for the trash cans. We're always thinking about those. Where are those going to go? And then gates to access those back garden areas. In blue, you see the rain gardens. And so we're always trying to direct the water away from the house and out into the garden so that we can soak up that precious rainwater. Again, the banco, the maybe a bird bath, and the little fire pit area. And then paths that for easy access all around. Just examples of arbors, what we're talking about, and the bancos, a fire pit area, and a fountain or a bird bath. And again, to us, the trees are really the structure of the garden, along with the hardscape. And so we thought about, okay, where do we want shade? So we proposed cedar elm for the front yard in the rain garden. These are trees that naturally grow in places that they might be at the bottom of a bluff where they get more rain, more water from storms. And so that's why we proposed the cedar elm. It's a tough tree. This tree will even work in West Texas. Enough can't be said about how great of a tree it is, and it turns a beautiful yellow in the fall. Then because this is the south-facing garden, it's going to be pretty warm. We proposed desert willows. That's what the DW is there. And let's see, here's my desert willow shot off to the left. Has gorgeous purpley or white blooms in the summer. So hummingbirds love them, butterflies love them, and they are deciduous. These are all deciduous trees, so that in North Texas it can get so cold. We're allowing that warm winter sun into the house. For evergreen, we have Yopon holly here and here to give some evergreen so that this doesn't look totally bare in the winter. Here's a shot of Yopon holly. This is a tree that'll grow up to 15 or so feet, and it comes in multi-trunks, which are very interesting. I love multi-trunk trees. And then we proposed a lacy oak to help shade from the west sun. The lacy oak is a smaller oak. It has a blue-green cast to it. It's just one of my favorite trees. And then its leaves turn an apricot color in the fall. Moving on to the back, along the side here, we were imagining that we didn't want to see this house because all the bedrooms are on this side. So we chose wax myrtles, which is this plant, and it's evergreen, of pretty fast grower, and would give that nice evergreen screening there. I always encourage people, think about your side yards. These are actually very special places. And you could even, put a little tiny fountain outside one of the windows if you wanted to screen out traffic noise if you have traffic nearby. Don't forget about the side yards because they're beautiful too. And then in the back, we proposed rusty black haw viburnum out the back. This is a fabulous small tree native to North Texas. It has gorgeous white pom-pom blooms in the spring and beautiful fall color. I love this plant. I've got like 8 of them in my yard. I kind of went crazy with those. The other tree we use is the big tooth maple here. And I don't know if any of you have ever hiked on at Lost Maples or at McKittrick Canyon at the Guadalupe Mountains, but these are turned beautiful red in the fall, and really love this tree a lot. It's more of an upright growing tree, and they grow along, gravelly drainages. So that's why we have it where we do in this garden. And then we have chinkapin oaks. And chinkapin oaks are over here. And they're the ones that have that totally different leaf than most oaks. They have that serrated leaf that really makes them distinguishable. And they're just a great, hardy, shade-giving tree. And they can take additional water as well. And then Mexican plum next to our banco. That is the white blooming tree you see in this photo. Beautiful fragrance in the spring and just gorgeous. And like when there's a full moon, those blossoms it's like they're glow in the dark. They're so beautiful. And then we do have a little red bud here on the west side, giving some shade to this west-facing window, and that is the purple blooming that you see there with the Mexican redbud. So we used a lot of plants, a lot of different plants, and I'm just going to kind of go through these with you. I mean, I could probably take all day talking about this, but I will refrain from talking all day. But again, out front, we really approach this using very drought-tolerant, sun-loving plants. But we also thought about wanting some evergreen plant material out here so that it didn't feel totally bare in the winter. I'm just going to go to this next slide because this really goes into a little more detail about the front. So, out by the street, we are proposing Mexican feathergrass, which is just a super drought-tolerant plant. And when we're designing gardens, we always think or at least I do, I'm trying to weave these plants together. I want it to flow from one area to the next. So you'll notice that we have the Mexican feathergrass here, and then we skipped across the sidewalk and put a few on the other side as well. Interplanted with the Mexican feathergrass, we have red yucca. And this is a wonderful plant, sends up those red spikes. It's just gorgeous. So we, again, skipped that across as well. And you can see it with that kind of cross-hatched symbol there. We also tucked in some Salvia gregii or autumn sage. That's this plant that you see up here. We also used it at the front of the house too, where it would soak up sun. It can also take a little bit of shade. So that's that. And then this orange that you see here is flame acanthus. Beautiful red-orange blooms. Mine's blooming like crazy right now. It can take also a little shade, but it really appreciates sun. I've got it under some shade at my house, but it does get dappled light, and it's blooming really beautifully right now. A lot of these plants bloom a lot in the fall and the spring. The great thing about red yucca, though, is it blooms pretty far into the summer. Anyway, because this rain garden comes through here, we use little blue stem, which is this bluegrass that you see here. It appreciates a little bit of extra water, though it is very, very drought tolerant. Another plant we have growing, that purple one that you see there, the three, is this Amorpha fruticosa, and it has these really dark violet blooms that are really cool, and then a really different leaf pattern than the other plants that are next to it. I always try to think about textures and contrasting fine textures with bolder textures, and then I think about colors. This darker green plant that you see here, it's one of my favorite plants, and we've got it on both edges, but it is called mist flower. It's the one that's blooming white in this photo. It loves blooming this time of year. It will also bloom a little bit in the spring, but it's just beautiful, and the butterflies and native bees that go to it are just gorgeous. The other thing I like about it is once it's established, it's pretty much semi-evergreen. So you don't have to cut it back every year, though it's probably good to cut it back at least once every couple of years, depending on how cold that winter was. The prairie, our little pocket prairie that we have here, we're proposing to plant blue grama, which is this beautiful grass. And then we have liatris and yucca pallida coming up out of it. So this was really inspired by Blackland Prairie, and just makes a beautiful little maintainable prairie in the front yard. And then as you get closer to the front door, the purple that you see is fall aster, again, which has just been blooming beautifully this fall. We have another evergreen here and here called agarita. And agarita is like our native holly. It has a yellow bloom in the spring and then beautiful red berries after that. But it's a spiky little evergreen that is a really nice texture. And then up by the front door, we wanted some evergreen, and so we used dwarf yopon, and that's what that green that you see here. It's a relative of the larger yopon, but it stays smaller. So we have some by the front door, and then we also put a few out in here to have a little bit of evergreen weaving into the garden. And just to wrap this portion up, this is more Salvia gregii and Salvia regula here kind of growing together. And then off to the back, our rain gardens, this one continues alongside the east side and then culminates in a larger rain garden back here. So, and then we have another rain garden here. We have coralberry that we've proposed for these rain gardens, and that's this plant. It will spread, so you only need to plant maybe 4 to 5 of them, and they should eventually spread in each area. You don't have to plant wall to wall, and you don't have to plant huge quantities either, although I might have gone, no, I think I did about the right amount for me on this. But it's just always keep in mind how big these plants get. And when we do a planting plan like this, we try to show the full grown size. So when it gets planted, you'll see a lot more soil than you're seeing in this plan right now. We have a Texas wisteria growing on this little eyebrow arbor that we did over the back door. As far as vines go, we've got Carolina jessamine, which is evergreen, growing on this arbor. And then we have the fragrant sumac growing in this shadier area on the north side. It's a wonderful, wonderful plant. And then I'm kind of skipping around a lot. We've got more of the boneset or the mist flower for an evergreen along the wall or fence. We have sea oats, which is this sort of mint green color that also likes a little extra water. And you can see we're kind of weaving these same plants in and around so that it all kind of flows together. The purple is more fall aster. And then we have some smaller little sedges that are planted next to the pathways. And sedges are a great plant. And in the back along the fence, we wanted to screen this wall so that it and soften it. So we used Texas sage, shown here, and we put Texas lantana in front of it. So all of these should give summer color all throughout the summer. A buffalo grass lawn. And then in this shady corner under our chinkapin oak, we've got American beautyberry with the purple, gorgeous berries. And you can cut these and bring them in vases, and they last forever. They're gorgeous. And then Turk's cap growing under there. Around the bird bath, we have cedar sage, which is kind of a delicate little sage that's quite gorgeous. So that's kind of it in a nutshell, but thank you for your time.
Wow. So that was amazing. Thank you so much for that presentation. I know I learned a lot, and I'm really looking forward to utilizing a lot of those tips within my own garden. But thank you so much, Christy, and thank you, Haley, for your all's presentations. They were really, really helpful. We do have a couple questions, so let's see what we got with those. So, when cultivars are available, how do I know if the cultivar will still be as beneficial as the native to local wildlife?
I can answer that, or at least start answering it. I think, from the Native Plant Society's perspective, when there is a straight species available, if you are able to find it, we always prefer you get that, but we also understand that sometimes they just aren't available, and cultivars are another option. A lot of times growers can't find the straight species to grow from seeds, so we still encourage you to try cultivars in your landscape if you need to. And I think just as a general rule of thumb, the more different the cultivar is from its original species in terms of maybe having a double bloom when previously it was a single bloom, or quite a different color or leaf pattern, I think that the likelihood of it maybe not serving the same purpose for insects would be greater. But the truth is there's still a lot of research that needs to be done on how pollinators interact with cultivars. And so, my perspective would be to try it out if that's what you have available to you, and just observe it and see how you like it in your garden.
I agree with everything you said.
Oh, good.
Wonderful. All right. And so the next question we've got, how do you envision a landscape before ever beginning on its drawing and or its installation?
Well, I guess I'll take that. Again, I really look at the site and the ecoregion, and I listen to my clients on what their dreams are for their home. It all just culminates together. Where is the water going? Where do I need protection from the wind? Or where do I need shade? I just think of all those things, and then I'm inspired by the ecoregion where these particular projects are. I always use nature as a guide. I do tend to be more I'm inspired by seeing other people's work and kind of going around town and seeing other projects. But I would say I'm more inspired by these native places, like going on hikes and things like that, just where I can be immersed in nature and really see out in nature how things grow with one another. These compatible species and things. So anyway, my clients are my inspiration, and I would say the place, the region. I always tell people, own your geography. Use plants that are native and they're tough, and just be inspired by your surroundings and your clients.
Well, your projects certainly are a work of art. They're amazing to look at. So they're beautiful.
I have an incredibly talented team.
Yeah, you would have to. It's amazing.
I mean, nothing would ever get done without them.
Do you have any special guidance for helping plants overwinter, and then given the extremes of temperature we often experience?
I would just say, if you are using Texas natives that are for your local ecoregion, the chance of you losing them over the winter, even with some of our extremes, is fairly low relative to some of our non-natives, that we lost during that big freeze that Christy spoke of a few years ago. I think if you are putting plants in the ground this fall, actually fall is an awesome time to plant native perennials. Because they're new in the ground this winter, you may want to cover them if you get a particularly hard freeze, just because they're still getting established. But I don't really cover any in-ground plants after that first year of being established in my garden. And I think that's kind of for most of those plants, they should do pretty well. Obviously, you're not going to have 100% success rate, but I think a pretty good chance of them surviving the extremes.
Yeah, I would say if you use native plants, there's really no big worries. But if you get tempted to use, for instance, an agave that is native to Arizona or something, you might cover that. But if you stick with natives of your ecoregion, you're just going to be worry-free in the winter. You can just be in there with your hot chocolate and rest assured it's all going to live.
Perfect. And so our next one is, how can we adapt the information presented tonight to other regions?
Well, I think, the design is pretty universal. Things we talked about, like microclimatic design, thinking about your microclimate, thinking about, do I want more of an evergreen feel, or do I want blooms, or do I want both? And thinking about weaving things together, not overplanting, but not underplanting either. I just think, and study your ecoregion. Native Plant Society has these fabulous lists available on their website that you can look at and are enormously helpful. We use them for our projects that give you this listing of all the plants. I would also say go to your botanical gardens for inspiration. Just go to public parks that have used native plants. And of course, at us in Austin, we always go to the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center because Andrea does such a great job there, and her team, of these horticultural displays of different native plants. That's where I learned a lot when I first moved back to Texas and was trying to start my practice here. So.
Awesome. Well, I think that was the last question that we have for this, but thank you all again so much for joining us and presenting all your wonderful knowledge. It's been really helpful and really wonderful to learn. But we extend our gratitude to you all, and thank you everyone else in the audience for joining us. We appreciate you, but we wish you all the best and have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Thank you so much.
You know.